Today, we are diving deep into one of the most famous disasters in history. We're going to unpack the story of the RMS Titanic, a ship that was called a triumph of modern engineering, only to sink on its very first trip. It's a wild story about ambition, a whole lot of human error, and one very, very big iceberg. All right, let's get into it.
And yeah, that's really where it all begins, with this phrase right here. The company that built it, the White Star Line, was so unbelievably confident in its design that they actually called it the Unsinkable ship. That's not just confidence, that's hubris. And it would, of course, become the most tragic irony of the entire story.
So, let's set the scene. It's April 10th, 1912. Just picture the buzz in the air at Southampton. The biggest, most luxurious ship the world has ever seen, a literal floating palace, is about to set sail for the first time, with more than 2,000 people on board. The excitement must have been absolutely electric. And the scale of this thing was just mind-boggling. To put it in perspective, we're talking about a ship taller than a 10-story building. It was an absolute marvel, packed with luxuries you'd only find in the fanciest hotels, heated swimming pools, grand staircases, even Turkish baths and multiple restaurants. This was the absolute pinnacle of luxury, and its engineering, well, that seemed just as flawless. And you can see why they felt so invincible. The Titanic had these incredible, cutting-edge safety features. It had a double-bottom hull, which is kind of like a second skin for the ship, but the real game-changer was its 16 watertight compartments. The idea was brilliant. If there's a leak, you just seal off the flooded section and the ship stays afloat. It was specifically designed to survive even if 4 of these compartments filled with water. 4! But here's the thing. This wasn't just some leisurely trip across the ocean. Oh no, this was a race. The real goal wasn't just to get to New York. It was to get there by the morning of April 17th and shatter the transatlantic speed record while doing it. And that pressure, right there, is what set the whole disaster in motion. So you've got this veteran captain, Edward Smith, with over 30 years of experience. But he's under some serious pressure. Why? Because the chairman of the White Star Line, J. Bruce Ismay, is on the ship with him. And the story goes that Ismay was really pushing Captain Smith to keep the speed dangerously high. They wanted to make a splash, to arrive in New York with headlines. Okay, so this is where the perfect storm really starts to brew. That need for speed led to a whole series of small what-if moments, a bunch of tiny mistakes and bits of bad luck that just started to line up, one after another, like dominoes getting ready to fall. 9. Let that sink in for a second. That's how many iceberg warnings the Titanic received in the days before it sank. Starting on April 12th, other ships are radioing in saying, hey, there's a huge ice field up ahead. But because they were so focused on speed, these warnings were, for the most part, just ignored. And then you have this detail, which is just, it's almost hard to believe. The lookouts, the guys whose whole job was to scan the horizon for danger, didn't have binoculars? Why not? Because the binoculars were locked in a cabinet, and the one guy with the key got transferred to another ship right before they left, and he forgot to hand the key over. So these 2 men were staring into a pitch-black, moonless night with nothing but their own eyes. This was the last chance, the final warning. A nearby ship, the SS Californian, radioed in to say they had completely stopped for the night because they were surrounded by ice. But the Titanic's radio operator, Jack Phillips, was swamped sending personal messages for the passengers. He was so annoyed by the loud interruption that he shot back, "Shut up, I am busy," and he never passed that final critical warning to the captain. And there you have it. The warnings were ignored, the lookouts were blind, the stage was perfectly set for disaster. From the exact moment that iceberg was finally spotted to the ship's final plunge into the freezing ocean, the unsinkable Titanic had less than 3 hours left to live. You can see on this timeline just how shockingly fast it all went down. At 11:39 p.m., the shout goes out, iceberg right ahead. Just 60 seconds later, they hit it. By 12:05 a.m., the ship's fate is sealed. The designer tells the captain it's going down. And by 2:20 a.m., it's gone. And look at that detail about the first lifeboat, launched with only 27 people when it could hold 65. It's a perfect example of the chaos and total lack of preparedness that night. So why did it sink? Well, here's the fatal math. It wasn't one giant gash like you see in the movies. The iceberg actually scraped along the side of the ship, buckling the steel plates and popping rivets. This opened up 6 of those supposedly watertight compartments to the sea. Remember, the ship was designed to survive 4 being flooded, but 6? No chance. From that moment on, sinking wasn't a possibility. It was a mathematical certainty.
And this right here, this is the most horrifying part of the whole tragedy. The Titanic, this massive ship, only had enough lifeboats for about half the people on board. It was technically legal at the time, but it was a death sentence. Even if they had launched every single boat perfectly full, which they absolutely did not, around 1,000 people had literally no way off the ship. They were doomed from the start. For every single person who went into the water that night, this number sealed their fate. The North Atlantic Ocean was a bone-chilling -2 degrees Celsius. Water that cold will literally suck the life out of you. Even the strongest person would succumb to hypothermia in minutes. 30 minutes was the absolute maximum anyone could have survived.
In the days that followed, the world was just reeling. Everyone was asking the same question. How could the unsinkable ship sink? The focus immediately turned to finding survivors and, of course, launching massive investigations to figure out just how this cascade of failures could have possibly happened.
And what the inquiries found was just heartbreaking. The rescue ship, the Carpathia, was a hero. It steamed full speed through that same dangerous ice field to save 706 people. But the SS Californian, it was only 37 kilometers away. Its crews saw the Titanic firing distress rockets, but their captain just dismissed them. And get this, the White Star Line got criticized for not having enough lifeboats, but in the end, they faced almost no legal consequences. The blame was mostly put on simply hitting an iceberg.
So we come back to that one big question. How did the Unsinkable really sink? The truth is, it wasn't just the iceberg. It was a deadly cocktail of arrogance, a reckless obsession with speed, and one human error after another. The story of the Titanic is so much more than a shipwreck. It's a timeless, brutal lesson that no matter how advanced our technology gets, it's never immune to human failure.